swarmed by ghosts. An LSD and DPT trip report by unnerving. Posted to earwid.org, August 22nd, 2017. T plus 0 hours. 5 tabs of acid on the tongue. I then prepare a bump of DPT for later, and eye out the dose like a dumbass. T plus 0 hours and 30 minutes. Normal feeling of coming up on acid, feeling elated, feeling like there is energy flowing around me and into me, brighter colours, faint patterns, etc. I begin getting a melting and twisting and warping of surfaces and lines that I never have noticed before this markedly. My screen starts to breathe. T plus 1 hours. Exactly 1 hour has passed. I'm ready to blast off. I go over to where I have the DPT set out and cut it into 3 lines. I rail them one at a time. It is incredibly uncomfortable. In my nose, I can tell that it tastes like hellishly bitter burnt plastic. It sticks to my palate and desiccates everything. Not only that, there's so much of it. T plus 1 hour and 20 minutes. I put my computer away, and I can feel everything rising. The world around me is beginning to swirl and form interlocking polygons. Traces and flashing colour patterns and twisting fractals begin to dominate everything. The noises around me start to warp and flange and alter in pitch. T plus 1 hour and 30 minutes. I begin to think and meditate as the boundaries of my body start to blur. I close my eyes to see a world of glowing lines intersecting to form tessellated polygons overlaid on breathing fractals. I can feel my mind drift into this as my body becomes fainter. I begin to think about all sorts of dilemmas in my personal life. I seem to come to satisfactory conclusions to these issues, but I either lose track of them among the torrent of colourful racing thoughts, or they were purely conceptual, and I couldn't really apply them in the form of words afterwards. As I begin to chain from one abstract thought to the next, I feel like I'm building a mountain of thoughts to stand upon, and as it builds, my mind ascends to higher and higher places with it. T plus 1 hour and 45 minutes. I stand up and wander about my room. I try drawing a little bit, but I'm drifting further and further from myself in body and mind every second. I'm starting to feel like I'm a completely different being by now. I wander over to a table where I keep several animal skulls. I pick up my favourite, a beautifully intact deer skull, so wonderfully smooth and pearly, so aesthetically perfect. I laid shirtless on my bed, gouging its teeth across my chest. I felt so physically numb, I didn't notice it leaving deep scratches on my torso. The skull itself was so incredible, so powerful, that I began to think of the animal that once inhabited it. I began to think about its life, its energy, its raw power. In it harming me, I realised that all living things have a burning life force within them that makes them fight and struggle to exist, to survive. I realised my own life force drew from this same wellspring, that it was common to all Earth life, an unchanging fragment of divergent evolution, perhaps derived from the replicative nature of DNA and RNA. I began to picture myself as a folk hero, travelling a spirit forest with my spectral deer sidekick, a skull with pulsing polychrome tendrils moulded into the shape of a deer. Between that was experiencing the skull pulsing with the deer's life force. It would shake and press its antlers into me and dig its teeth into me. It had so much energy, so much fire behind it. T plus 2 hours and 15 minutes. My thoughts begin to stray to death, to suicide. I've been thinking about suicide so non-stop lately. In fact, this trip was my last-ditch effort to find some reason not to kill myself. Death, the thought of death approaches me. I feel so beyond death. I feel like I have already died, like I have not yet been born. What a curious thing death and time are. How odd it is that consciousness seems to transcend time itself. I began thinking about quantum immortality, that in a truly infinite universe or multiverses, every iteration of every atomic moment, reduced to the very most basic component, as a function of time and space, exists somewhere. Somewhere, this information is encoded. Something, I don't know what it is to this day, told me that encoded in the air were the whispers of 1,000 consciousness, encoded as binary data in the smallest and most efficient molecular storage mechanism in the entire universe. Something beyond the current limits of human observation. Of course, this is just blind conjecture. I'm just on a lot of drugs right now. But this idea of quantum immortality really stuck with me, regardless of whether or not it was directly encoded into this universe. Somewhere, everything that was going to happen had already happened. Everything existed as it was. Linear time was just an illusion. It's just us taking all of existence that is already laid out before us and sequencing it. Consciousness was truly beyond linear time. Mine was, at least. And so were many others that I was suddenly aware of. I realized that no one was truly dead, and that I became aware of other consciousnesses inhabiting this realm. These were consciousnesses that were already dead and had not yet been born. In other words, ghosts. This realization was like opening a door between us. We were all suddenly aware of each other, and we were both really confused. They swarmed around me. I could sense them. I could sense so many other presences around me. The room dropped to a chill as I kept catching these looming presences. I couldn't see them per se, but I perceived them as hands grasping and clutching at me. I was terrified. Terrified they might speak to me, and that I may be afflicted with these ghosts forever. I envisioned them as hands, faces, and figures behind a thin, translucent cloth, all leaning in towards me. They all had different personalities. Some were kind, calm, and friendly. Most were indifferent. The benevolent ones would inhabit me. I would feel their personality, wisdom, and thoughts course through my neurons. Some, however, I could feel exuding malevolence and ill will. They loomed behind me, towered over me. One of them seemed fond of grabbing my head and pulling it backwards, down towards my bed. It felt like deer antlers smashing against my skull, which would transform into alabaster fingers that pulled me down. These spirits would surround me, clutch at me. I knew that some evil people had once inhabited this space and wanted to harm me. I saw in my chest a glowing core. The glowing core of life force. My burning life force, keeping me from fading into the abyss of asphodel like them. They were all clutching at it, and I had to repel them all through sheer light and force of will. T plus 2 hours and 45 minutes. It was at this point that I began to really seek out these evil spirits, question them and follow them to where they were born from. I closed my eyes and began to trace them to the root. It was like burrowing through thick underbrush. I got deeper and deeper and encountered a being counter to me. A trickster being that didn't seem to harbour malevolence but still acted antagonistic towards me. This was my divine rival. It toyed with my thoughts and sent ghosts after me. I suddenly realised something. This was God. Or rather, this was a manifestation of God. It had come down to me in a mortally recognisable form. I was blessed with its presence. I wondered, why is this God? Why do I have to agree with it? Why do I have to be subservient to it? And why does submitting to it feel so tranquil? I seem to have my mind shifted to a paradigm in which the paranormal existed, and I was able to believe in and follow God. I still question God though. Why was it the ultimate authority? I began to challenge God, think of ways I could exert power over this force. So this trickster being, after outsmarting me at every turn, decided to enmesh me in itself and show me the true nature of God. God is a representation of the absolute within measurable and tangible human experience. Subject to entropy, every universal force we encounter has astronomical chances of random variation. God, however, is contained in life force. Life force sustains itself by altering perception of the world around it to make itself true and maintain its existence. It is absolutely recursive in how it alters perception. It is in this recursion that the absolute lies. It is within every living thing, also probably derived from the replicative nature of DNA and RNA. Humans are unique in being able to recognize this force, and then later personify it as God or gods. This is simply a byproduct of the survival mechanism that drives everything. Life force does anything to stay alive. Every adaptation, every thought, is sometimes through circuitous routes, an extension of that. Everything is subject to entropy, however. Entropy is the unstoppable and ultimate power in the universe. As God exists only within living things, even God is subject to entropy. During this trip, I began to experience the positive feedback loops that have been plaguing me with burgeoning depression as something actually positive. This recursion showed me that they could be harnessed in a way that didn't drive me towards the edge. I began to wonder, why do my thoughts seem in such opposition to life force? Why am I self-destructive? I began to realize that it's simply the random mutations that drive natural selection, being more subject to entropy. My mutation was a knack for self-destruction. The life force was still there. It just found itself in combat with another powerful counterforce. As powerful as the life force, but twisted and dark. There were moments during the trip where I was overtaken by vanity and ego, where I believed I was the chosen one by God, where I believed I had solved major unsolved problems in math and physics, where I believed I had opened a rift between our world and the spirit world. This all, of course, turned out to be complete bullshit, but whatever. The rest of the night really wasn't much. I played a lot of video games and went to 7-Eleven. The visuals played out for a while, but my mind itself became more human. I rode an emotional roller coaster as morning approached, shifting between divine elation and a deep depression.
My friend ordered a less-known tryptamine off the internet via a research chemical website. The name for it is DPT. I was familiar with a few psychedelics at the time and had tried 4-ACO-DMT before, which I figured would be quite similar. I was an avid cannabis smoker as well, so I figured maybe I knew something about something. Alright boys and girls, there's only one place to start with the story, and it's from the beginning. Nighttime in a small room in the suburbs. I sat down at my desk and pulled open the drawer. Hidden under the rubbish was the light, the connection, the powder. I pulled it out and opened the bag. It smelled pretty strange. Out of a journal, a page was ripped and then put on the desk. DPT followed on waves into the shore of white across a dried plant sheet. On the page was now 75 milligrams of DPT, which was a guess because I didn't have a scale to measure it properly. I wouldn't recommend this, it's potent stuff. I took out a straw and insufflated the strange powder. Wow, what a burn. I drank about 2 giant glasses of green tea and landed myself on my leather couch. I felt myself sinking into something. It comes on fairly fast. I haven't done DMT yet, but I would say based on my research and listening to McKenna that this is quite a different venture. Now my sense of time was quite off, but I would say I could feel myself coming up after about a minute or two. My body slowly came up with this extremely euphoric feeling, something so elated and free that I had never experienced and haven't experienced again since. If saying Cloud 9 was ever appropriate, that truly would fit it. After some moments, time wasn't an observable pattern at this point. I started to feel my mind completely and utterly altered. I could feel the waveforms all around flowing through me, and I felt as if, while still in my body, I was sinking into some sort of weird hyperspace, but while still half existing in this dimension. My eyes were closed for some time, just feeling this honestly indescribable feeling, and then I opened them. This is when things truly got strange. I was sitting almost completely in the dark, except for the street lamp emitting a barely visible light spectrum through my window. Sitting in the chair in front of me, a figure began to illuminate, starting from its head down, not quite to its chin, like a strange light shadow casted over something. It was staring right at me, not the me I always think I am, the real me, my real self. At this point, my ego shell had been slowly stripping away until I was completely naked, but it wasn't an uncomfortable naked. It was like taking off dirty rotten rags that I had been wearing since my induction into society. It was like being a newborn baby in the sense that one doesn't understand the reflections that others project onto them to give them their refracted perception of their self. I was pure soul, and this being could see right into me, but I wasn't scared. I was amazed and speechless. I could tell you what it looked like. Giant elongated dome head with huge pitch black eyes, gray skin, the color of dirty snow, and just like that, I can't recall. A moment passes and I recall sitting and just listening, in the complete silence, to a X and post-worldly symphony of vibrations. Zoom and zaps and zips and all the music my creative god self could conjure, anything, everything, it's all inside, I just didn't know it yet. It hits you hard. Without the movement of a finger, I can create almost anything, and it's so beautiful. But at that point, I know it's not really just me. Words can only paint a picture around the reality of the situation. Experience is real, believing is now seeing. As I said, perception of time went out the window, so my next memory frame is this. As I laid on my couch, I felt the biggest surge of sexual energy I've ever felt. It was like all the hidden energy around me was tunneling into my sacral chakra. I felt like I was on fire with emotion and energy. Then two fairies came to me and started caressing me. The rest I will leave to your imagination. Next frame. I am now in my garage, smoking a cigarette. I am at a super consciousness level, and my senses are also the most heightened they have ever been. I am not exaggerating any of this. If anything, this is all an understatement. Wow, smoking the cigarette was so bizarre, and it felt like such an abstract thing to do. I could smell and taste every particle, and the smoke made strange intricacies and fractals. Then the voices came. The only thing I could really say is that it was like a meeting inside my head of people who weren't exactly me, but were part of me at the same time, or rather, I was part of them. It was like alternate reality versions of myself, or like multiple spirit guides. A few of them were saying things like, this one's going to change things. And then only one of them was saying something like, oh, I don't know. Then a few were saying, this one will do great things. And then in solitude again was the voice of doubt, until it stopped saying anything and was convinced my soul was capable of something unique to my situation. The overall experience I would say lasted a few hours, but I'm not exactly sure. Time warps when you're there, but you're still here. I would say it was one of the most mind-manifesting experiences of this natural life. I wasn't quite the same afterwards. Although I've slipped back into my ego patterns, I know where I can find something special in my mind and in myself.
In Hell with the Lord of the Flies. A DPT trip report by Vivec. Posted to earwid.org, September 13th, 2021. This trip report is about a very irresponsible behaviour I had only a few months after I discovered psychedelics. Psychedelics had only been positive experiences for me until then, and I didn't understand what the big deal was about setting, etc. I'd already had LSD 6 times, and while I had uncomfortable trips with thought loops and paranoia, etc., the overall experience was always very positive. I also had dissociatives several times, but I never tried anything more powerful than that. In particular, I never tried DMT, and I didn't imagine what a breakthrough was like. In particular, prior to this trip, I had a couple of very powerful and therapeutic mystical experiences on LSD. I was going through a divorce at the time, and these experiences were extremely positive for me. I've done many things I was not proud of, which I needed forgiveness and a new start. While I was never a religious person before, LSD allowed me to suddenly feel the love of God, as in the first cause, and his forgiveness. It made me feel part of a whole, where there can be no evil. But the LSD trips were so long, I wondered if I'd ever be able to find another substance that could allow me to have the same type of experience just in a shorter time frame, as I felt I still needed some therapeutic trips to get rid of all the hate and pain I accumulated over the years. And now, this is how I find DPT. I took DPT twice, 2 nights in a row. The first night I tried to smoke or vape the thing, but couldn't. The tutorials were too complicated to follow, and I was too impulsive. So I decided to try intranasal. I tried one large bump, maybe 100 milligrams, but barely felt anything. Some euphoria, a nice if erotic sensation going through my body. Then I went to bed, and suddenly I saw a being going through my door, walking right through the room and disappearing through the wall. The being was a tall fly man, all thin, black-skinned, with bright red eyes. A couple of days before, I had seen the first episode of Rick and Morty, where they battle a similar fly man, and there was no doubt this was the same being. What was really weird about this experience, that lasted only a few seconds, is that first I wasn't sure that I really saw it. I thought maybe I was just pretending to myself that I saw it, which is weird. The second thing that was very weird is that I am a very rational person. I knew I had taken a hallucinogen, and still I was convinced that the being that I just saw was real. The DPT just opened a third eye, made me see another dimension. The fly man was always there, but now the DPT allowed me to see it. This is what I truly felt, and it was very strange because I was certain that what I saw was a real, other-dimensional being. The next day, I talked about this underwhelming experience to my friends. "The flymen say hi to you," I said, laughing. For all I knew, I now understood that there are other dimensions, and in one of those dimensions, these fly people do their life, minding their own business. The second night, I decided to try 2 bumps. I almost tried 3, but a moment of wisdom made me stop at 2, probably 200 milligrams. Oh God, was I not prepared. I'm writing this 2 years later, and the experience of what happened next is still so vivid in my mind. In a word, it was traumatizing. 15 minutes after the ingestion, I start hallucinating. These are the most beautiful hallucinations I have ever had. Every object becomes shining, enveloped in a halo, and I feel I'm in some sort of futuristic video game. I'm so happy right now. Go to bed and I start to look at the wall. The hallucinations become more and more powerful. Motifs on the wall start moving, and I sense this evil presence. I panic. Objects start moving, and I start thinking, what if I never come down? What if I can never see the world right again? God, what have I done? Have I really broken my brain this time? The wall has a mural with motifs that start looking like skulls and spikes. The spikes turn and turn in a circle, until they form something like a gigantic mouth with hundreds of teeth. I'm gonna die of fear. I can hear my heart beating. And that was when he appeared. The flyman. But this is not a nice, casual, extraterrestrial being from Rick and Morty. Not at all. I was completely mistaken. This is a demon. The Lord of the Flies. Beelzebub. I am paralyzed in fear. The demon and I became instantly transported in the gigantic mouth. Then I can no longer see my room. We arrive in another world, his world, which I can only describe as hell. Fire, sand, rocks. It is burning, and I am dead. I no longer know who I am or what I am doing here. Time stops, and the demon shows me what seems like thousands of pictures of horrors. Tortures, dismemberment, decapitations, burning bodies of humans. All of those go very fast. At a specific moment, I see images flashing, and I tell myself, this is metamorphosis. I don't know why I thought that. It's like I'm trapped in the hell of every culture on Earth. After this is all over, I find myself lying on the ground in the desert, the fly demon standing tall at my foot. The sky is red. There is a grey mountain far away. I'm not sure what the demon wants to tell me because it does not speak, but I know he wants to show me his world. Here, war is always raging. These powerful beings battle with each other. There is a town far away, and I see the town exploding as if it was nuked by a ray of white fire. I then see a red dragon, the same as in the famous painting by William Blake, flying in the sky. This doesn't make any sense, I tell myself. Why would God create demons? God loves us. Why would he create evil? I sense their very power. They are so much more powerful than us. It's as if the demon is saying, you are mere insects to us. You humans are nothing. And then, the war calms down. Silence. The demon looks at me, and I am still laying on the ground. He directs his right hand towards my body, and I feel that I know what he is thinking. Because you use my power, I'm going to take your body. My arm starts moving on its own. I feel the demon trying to enter my body and possess me. My whole body starts twitching. I strike the bed with my right arm a couple of times to check that I can still control it. This is the end for me. I try to get my two hands close to each other, but it's very difficult to move them. When my two hands finally touch, I perform the sign of the cross. I don't know why I did that. It's the first time in my life that I've ever actually done something like that. But suddenly, a white light appears in the sky, and the demon is destroyed. I'm saved. I see my room again. No more hallucinations. I feel very frightened though. I get up and throw up, vowing to never touch this satanic substance ever again, and swallow a couple of Xanax. For the next few days, I was regularly watching over my shoulder to see if he wasn't here. It took me 4 days to accept that the demon was not real. I threw the DPT, and 2 years later, I've never touched this product again, and stuck to LSD and other softer psychedelics. My behaviour has also changed a lot. I've become a very pro-social person, whereas beforehand, I was slightly antisocial. And I think this trip had a lot to do with that.
DPT was on my try list for quite some time, and having recently attempted it rectally with no effects, I decided it was time to knuckle down and try insufflation. I had done my research on this material and read many accounts describing its often extreme, pushy, and sometimes dark nature, so I resolved to take it easy, start with 30 milligrams, and bring the dose up slowly from there. The setting was our beautiful apartment, and my mental set was perfect, if not slightly nervous as I always am when preparing a sacred journey. It was a pleasant Sunday in spring, and I had no obligations for the entire afternoon and evening. I had my trusty lover and very experienced sitter by my side as always, and she was prepared to dedicate her afternoon and her typing skills to my needs. The following details the experience as it happened with a bit of post-editing. I cut 30 milligrams of the material into 2 equal lines. The substance is fairly sticky and smells much like DMT, and not unlike a rotting tooth. The burn was considerable, but not terrible. The post-nasal drip is bitter and disgusting. I've got some jaw clenching, and I'm feeling pretty queasy and lightheaded. I notice colors are warming up, and there's some morphing of my visual field. The taste alone is almost enough to make me want to throw up, but at the same time, ignoring it is not very difficult. I'm sipping on a cup of sweet tea, which helps considerably. I'm definitely feeling a nervousness developing, which in turn is making me feel as though I have to take a crap. 15 minutes in, mood-wise, I'm feeling totally benign. Physically though, I feel pretty unsteady. Walking feels more like floating above the ground. I definitely feel a little sick and I find myself belching a bit. At this point, if I scan the room quickly, things look normal, except for the brighter colors, but as I fixate on the Persian rug below my feet, it begins to crawl rapidly in small rippling waves. There is a weird, dreamy, and somewhat uncomfortable body load. It's hard to tell if I'm hot or cold, because I feel both. At times I feel very sleepy, and at times I feel very sick, and yet other times I feel completely normal. In terms of strength of the experience right now, it's a solid +2. 40 minutes in, and I'm at a weak +3. About 10 minutes ago, I was feeling rather crappy, and I suggested to my sitter that she snuff back the remaining material that I had pre-measured and join me in this bumpy ride, because I didn't think I was going to want to do more. Luckily for me, she declined, because I'm feeling better and have decided to insufflate another 12 to 13 milligrams. I would have been incapable of measuring out a new dose if I had wanted to. Even navigating my nose and straw above the dose is tricky at this point. I retired to the meditation room, and as I sit gazing into my sober lover's eyes, I feel a rush of lovely emotion rise up in me, and it brings tears to my eyes. These are the first psychological effects noted since the beginning. Visually, I'm finding it similar to 2CX with bright colors and tracers, which is surprising, being that DPT falls into a completely different category of substances. The other thing that is dominating this experience is the sensation of an internal vibration. It is a strange feeling and different from the usual nervous stimulation from other psychedelics. It is more persistent and less annoying for sure. Psychologically, if this leans more one way than the other, I'd have to say it is in a positive direction. An hour in, I'm feeling better and better all the time, although I can't say I feel great yet. This is not a recreational one at all, and going to a party is the last bloody thing on my mind. Either way, determined to go in full well, I'm going to insufflate another 12 to 13 milligrams for a total of 55 milligrams. I went back to the meditation room to do some yoga. I'm finding it difficult to restrain strong shuddering at times, much like post-orgasm shivers, but they don't feel as good. I just decided to lay on my back and navigate my mental space. I thought about a new friend of mine and what a great guy he is. It occurs to me that he is special, and the synchronicity of our meeting seems somewhat predestined. From there, I think of other friends in my family, and I find myself laughing and crying as I relay my thoughts to my girlfriend. This is a beautifully emotional substance, and the remarkable mental space I am in more than makes up for the heavy physical feeling I am enduring. I am noticing this is not nearly as pushy as oral DMT. It allows for self-guidance through the experience, and as the music changes, my mood gently changes with it. It feels very liquid. At one point, the music changes to a soft piano piece in a minor key, and I hear it in a way that I never have before. It is profoundly sad, but in a beautiful way. I break down, weeping gently, squeezing my girlfriend's hand. I don't feel bad. It is a beautiful, deep sadness, and I let the cathartic process happen freely, leaving me feel very liberated when it passes. There is nothing threatening or menacing about this experience, and at this point, I'm at a full +3. It's not as beautiful as oral DMT, but not nearly as threatening either. As my sitter dutifully records my notes on the laptop by my side, I'm finding it quite difficult to express myself. 2 hours in, this is a real thinker. I would give this substance high marks with respects to its therapeutic potential. I can think clearly, and if my thoughts go in a direction that doesn't feel right, I am free to redirect them in a more productive direction. It is slightly overwhelming at times, but definitely not pushy. There seems to be a nice female presence to it, a real teacher. My sense of compassion is raised, and the appreciation for the world around me is heightened wonderfully. 2 hours and 15 minutes in. I feel like the effects are starting to subside a bit. I feel a little dazed, like the come down from a good weed high. At this point, I'm ready to drag myself up off the floor and suggest that we go for a walk outside. The weather could not be better. It is sunny and mild, and all the blossom trees around our neighborhood are in full bloom. I take my camera with me and shoot some wonderful pictures of my love. My appreciation for architecture and the subtleties of nature are markedly enhanced. This is surely one of those golden, unforgettable moments. Back from our walk, and I am typing now. My God, it was breathtaking outside. Feeling the wind was invigorating, and the blossom trees were all in bloom. I found a new appreciation for our community and noticed how carefully designed it is, architecturally and aesthetically. Wow, I just spelled those 2 words perfectly as I typed them, something I would have had trouble doing sober, no doubt. I feel much more sober at this point and see a somewhat normal evening unfolding, although I feel quite exhausted. I have the usual tight feeling in my sinuses that I get when tripping and ache a bit all over. The excess stimulation is still there, and I have what can no better be described as mushroom gut. I feel very lucky and grateful for the experience I just had, and look very forward to experiencing DPT again. It was not as demanding, tiring, and difficult as my oral DMT trip, but still quite important in terms of what I experienced. I am left feeling very thankful and grateful for the friends that we have, and I felt the depth of my love for my girlfriend over and over. This experience left me profoundly thankful, as always, for my life, my friends, and my family.
The Danger of Insanity. The Art of Existence. A DPT and alcohol trip report by Mars. Posted to earwid.org, April 11, 2002. I began this experiment with little foresight, and I truly paid the price for it. I began the evening with several drinks. I had a lot of gin, more than I should have. I was most drunk. I said, "Hey, let's test the sacrament again." Okay, never attempted the nasal route, sounds easy enough. 100 milligrams of DPT hydrochloride salt in 2 quick shots. Oh dear, I can't see. Gotta puke again. Seems too strong. I lay down on the floor, face down. Now I'm gone, totally. I had no concept that I was even a person anymore. I thought that I was some form of insect life, and I only say this after analysing it later. It was like I was a fly that was looking for some slime on the floor to eat. There were other creatures like myself around me, and they kinda showed me what to eat. Ah yeah, we need this stuff, I remember thinking. I was like a newborn child in a new body. I had to relearn everything from scratch in this reality. My mind tried to retrieve my ego, and I thought, nah, I'm insane now. This is art. I knew that I was not alright, but I also thought that there was no other way to be, and that if I was indeed insane, well, that was it. I had no memory of taking any sacramental supplement, nor any memory of my life up until that point. I was comfortable being insane. There was no other way. I realised that there was no way I could ever communicate with another being again, except for these other insect creatures around me. Suddenly, I was beyond my insect form, and I feared that I was dead. It wasn't a scary feeling per se, just one of total loss. But this is where it got really intense. I was in a void of space, where other bodiless beings were swirling around madly. We all had one purpose: to get the thing. It was something that always avoided capture, like a point of light just out of reach. We all screamed and moaned and ripped each other's forms apart in an insane fit to get the thing. Time itself stretched to infinity. And of course, we could never get it. And I realised that this was never going to end. And I was damned to spend eternity trying to get the thing, whatever it was. Let's make up some games. I need to forget about the thing. We all do, I said to them all. Everyone else said, no, we must have it. And we went back to our painful torment, which seemed to last forever and ever and ever. But then it changed again, and I was being spoken to by some Oriental master. He spoke his language, which sounded Tibetan or something along those lines. I understood the meaning, but now that I think about the words he used, which I can still hear perfectly, I can't put it all back together again. He was telling me there was a great joyous occasion taking place, and I truly felt what he said. Many entities were preparing me for this joyous occasion. He showed me how to do this strange chant, which again I can't really put into words enough to type. He put all this emotion and energy and compassion into the chant, like he was showing me how to feel. It was most intense. I think I was even crying in the vision. I don't know what my face down in the floor body was doing back in reality, probably slobbering everywhere. Then it changed again. I transformed into a pitiful beggar. I was crawling around in the dirt chanting, Om Mani Padme Hum. But it was as if those were the only words I could say. They had to mean everything. Like dude can mean every word depending on inflection and context. I would change the inflection of the mantra, and it would take on new meanings each time. I said it with the most pitiful, horrible beggar's lost hope voice one could possibly muster up. I was at rock bottom right now. I had nothing, not even death. All I could do was beg for anything, and my begging was the mantra. Suddenly, I was whisked away again, this time by the benevolent spirits of spring. They showed me green parks and flowers, and filled my spirit with the joy and desire to get out there and give it your all. They actually said that to me, with a smile and a laugh. They made me so happy, and like I was one of them. I truly belonged with these beautiful spirits of spring and youth. We flew about quickly through the green lands, and just as we did, I was compelled to open my real eyes. My friend was face down on the floor next to me, and the room was swirling around like a Tool video. We both got up and were able to speak a few minutes later. He had not seen such visions as I had, but was still most impressed. We were back to a reasonable baseline within 3 hours from launch. I still cannot stop thinking about those visions. I feel changed, like I died and don't know what to do now. I feel like this life is the game. I wanted to play to forget about the thing. I hear the Oriental Master's words all day, but I don't remember what they meant. It's all just a feeling. Overall, too much, but very intense. I still feel like my body is out of whack physically and mentally. The chiropractor took one look at me and said, "What in the world happened to you?" He said there were several obvious signs of major stress in my system. Now, I would not recommend alcohol and these drugs at all, especially not together. Alcohol is not an MAO inhibitor, but can also greatly affect the intensity of most other drugs. This was a dangerous thing to do, and I would never repeat such an experiment whatsoever. The absolute safest way to take DPT is orally or rectally. If combined with Syrian rue seeds, the oral route is very nice, but it does last quite a while, I must say. Snorting DPT is too dangerous. Don't do it. Too many people have serious medical issues. How would you feel if you dosed your friend and he ended up in the hospital? This sort of stuff happens a lot. 100 milligrams rectally with a baby medical syringe is by far the best way to do this. Peace out, guys. Mars.
Male, age 63, 165 pounds, 6 foot. Experience with classic psychotropics, peyote, LSD, mushrooms. I'm generally sensitive to these. Intro to testing DPT. Casual study noted wide range of dose levels, and Shulgin's Tychel methods of administering describe mainly IM. Read about closed-eye visuals and transporting to or witnessing a tunnel of light or place of light. September 2011 to August 2012. Received what turned out to be a 250 milligram mediocre batch from a citizen. Escalated dosage 50 milligrams up in 25 milligram increments. Form, gel caps, oral. Effects, 50 to 100 milligrams. Pleasant physical rushes, field of vision sparkly like a less edgy 2CE. If I could meditate or be still, unnaturally 60s color edges, lime green, chartreuse, to objects. Had difficulty urinating. Closed eye, I beheld a lighthouse or throne beaming out lights. Its base was writhing satyr men with serpentine women, merging like Hindu yoni lingam sculpture, only alive and copulating. Could not get close to this event as it was more like a tree in a field. During the come down, any interior contemplation just brought the appearance of an insect-headed praying mantis munchkins that were up to no good or rearranging something in the elemental world. They were not scary, I just didn't like them. Then after nearly depleting my 2CE, I pull out a gram of what I thought was it, but no, it is DPT. 9 months old, unopened, standard black factory sealed packet, kept in a dark drawer in an AC'd house. I gel cap and down orally 135 milligrams as that was the level I reached on the crap stuff. Half hours in, I knew I had made a mistake. This hadn't degraded at all and was the real thing. The whizzing molecular stir in my every cell and sensation told me a biggie is coming. 45 minutes in, one of the top 10 most electrifying experiences of my life. Threads connecting my skin, I try to brush them off as cat hair, and interior were zipping out into a totally blurry field of floating ornamental air balloons and cascading vaults of color. Motor skills were hindered, focus impossible. The level of suspension of disbelief, believing the joyful or fearful possibilities my psyche was telling me was happening, was quick and intense. It captured all of my LSD affections, plus some spiritual, mythic, and very electrical presence. Light in all its manifestations was the theme. Blue light from my Wi-Fi as it was blinking became a wild severed cable spewing current wildly about. It was incendiary. I looked out my window, and yes, there were fire engines. Uh-oh. Could not read the small box in the computer screen to type anything in. Took a shower to calm myself down. Wonderful sensations, sexual and sensuous, but Mr. Willie had shrunken in fear, as if he had been in the ocean. Hydrating seemed and was important. Spilled Gatorade across counter, shaking hands. Stumbled into and against things. Bumped a pedestal upon which a Native American mini rug and a wooden sculpt rested. Sculpture flew to the ground as I clumsily stabilized the pedestal glass display case. What was in actually a wooden feather that was not glued in the sculpture bonked across the floor. Here is an example of the quick assumptions and beliefs, unfounded fears and thoughts that came way fast. The pedestal seemed to be memorial for a slain hero that I had disturbed, even desecrated. The wood feather I picked up was I knew to be from a bird, broken and my fault. I gently laid it on the table and said, I'm sorry for the offense, for the slaying of the wooden bird I never saw. I sit to check my heart rate with the fingertip pulse device. The red numbers jump about, 128 or 118, tachycardia. I can't tell and don't believe it anyway. Feels more elevated at 111 on 2CE. I'm not alarmed by this, it seems more from excitement, but there is that push, compelling motion. Go outside and it was a cool eve at sunset. The sky was dripping color. I was afraid. Had to induce the mantra, I'm just tripping and we'll get to a period when I'm not. Noticed one of my 2 house cats had snuck outside, shoot it back in. Could not think logically to any follow-up thought that might alleviate fear and upset. A war between angels is occurring, and I am maybe in the arena of collateral damage. My flesh appeared transparent, and the cogs and internal apparatus like spinning gears were rotating in conjunction, and at the same time roaring speed as the carousal of nature. A raging war event was in the sky. The earth was shimmering unsteadily. I could not sit still. Music Vangelis's 1492, a bit theatrical, stirred things up too much. I had trouble understanding and seeing the disc player, hit every button to off it. Parts of my house look unfamiliar, and in this recollection, I still don't know where I was when certain occurrences went down. I looked for my second cat, it turning quickly to tragedy, simply because I couldn't connect up the observation that with the less bold cat discovered outside, the other bolder one probably was too. Therefore, to simply go out back into a safely fenced inescapable yard and call the second cat all would be too well. No, it was gone. I caused it to disappear. I am responsible. I cry mournfully the name of the cat. My wife is before me. She is out for the evening, or I am seeing the moment when I must tell her I lost our little beloved. I weep. I moan for the loss. How did this happen? When did I get back outside? Was I inside or outside? I kneel to the cool cement patio. Meteors hurl in the pulsating heavens. I cry for my little companion to come to me. I mourn her possible loss as a current loss, death. I am weak. I see a host of entities hovering about. It is I who am dying. It's all right. It's not all right. I didn't mean to do it. I surrender and lay down on the pavement. This is a ritual. I am helplessly gently easing down. I am flat. My right arm is propped up, my hand limply spread as if seeking mercy is my impression. I am calm but extremely perplexed as to why this happened and why so quickly. Something really frightening is to the left, redness, a blood sacrifice on an Aztec stone, goodness and mercy to the right. I don't want to be one of those who plead for more life. The act, the panic and uselessness of such a request of the angel of death jar me a moment. But a quote from Joseph Campbell that the angel of death seems scary from far off, but is absolutely beautiful up close, or I am applying that thought now, seems whispered to me, or it was equally a sensation, a pause to behold the beauty about me and relinquish, surrender. I decided, again, not a thought, but a rescuing affirmation, that everything would be okay if I recited God's name, so I praised God as the creator of beauty and perfection, the beauteous. It came out respectfully, sincerely, even though his angels were slaying me. Could not see even the outline of the beings to my right, didn't glance at the ones on the left. I breathed deeply a cool air. The frightening elaboration of entities to my left evaporated. The mood shifted. I sighed like, phew. I curled up into a knee to the chest, one leg bent relaxed pose, sitting. A reprieve, not necessary for me to die, I marveled. What in the world just happened? I was so thirsty. Unfamiliarity with my backyard. I go inside for water. Can't find the cup of water and one of Gatorade I brought outside. Peek into the computer room and it is aflame from that blue light, that severed electrical cord that is streaming blue flame. Can't go in there. Somehow I ended up in my garage without the light on, searching for the cat, but not. Walk toward the side door like I usually do in the semi-darkness, but cannot find it. Stumble into things. This is a trash dump. My cat has been rat poisoned and is here somewhere. I am frantic, parched. I decide if I can get to the hose outside the side door, I will be alright. Knock things over. I head to the small windows across the garage door for some light. It is a prison cell. I am locked in, tortured. What did I do to deserve eternal thirst in such an ugly cell? Red death seems near. I kneel down, beginning the I'm too weak to resist this onslaught, but build a sudden resolve to fight. Before me on the floor are 2 snakes, rising up, not living, but made of gems. On the left, a red one, on the right, a white one. Gifts of inestimable value, sacredness. Immediately, I have taken the white one and am in trouble. Although I'm not holding, it is not even around. Wrong choice or a threat comes with it. It becomes clear that I am pursued for wrongly taking this gem. All I did was see its beauty or get near it. I resolved that I will resist this onslaught of danger and death. Somewhere in this 4th hour, lost in my garage, I think how fucked up I appear and will appear if my wife comes home right now. She is a straight arrow, and drugs in general is a forbidden for me. I stumble about the garage, into a wall, and slide down it like a drunken man. I get up, put on one of my hats hanging on a peg. It feels unfamiliar. I knew it was there barely seeing, then why can't I find the door? It is critical that I get fluids and cool air. The garage door opener is a 4-foot square of wiggling dull light. I press it and am jarred by the noise of the rising door. Ah, something real. I could see the door to the kitchen. I'm going to be alright. I rush into the kitchen. There is spilled red Gatorade on the dark counter, but at least it doesn't look like blood. Cold drinks and ice on my forehead and neck revive me. Real objects in the safe familiarity of my house are there and real. After sitting, I sense the push. The electric current of sheer pushing has subsided. Visuals are more organized in pattern, less of the blur of pandemonium. Feel really good and am amazed at the time. What was I doing all this time? Where was I in the house when certain things occurred? I search more like an irked, frustrated parent for my cat. There is no panic as the house is mine. My life is mine. My wife clicks open the kitchen door and sees me pacing about. I tell her I can't find Hermione. She helps me, then says, "There she is at the door." And sure enough, the little critter is staring in the back door glass. Everything is alright. I sit in my easy chair in the dim light. It is 10:20 p.m. My wife darts in and out doing her evening routine. I have to smile about weird and senseless goings-on in my head. I'm delighted with this ebbing of the spectrum of dazzling colors, but tracers still trace. I say something aloud like, "Requisition more bubble-butted grocery carts," referring to some dwarf shopping beneath the furniture. It is very funny and I chuckle at my own wit. Couldn't sleep until 2 a.m. even with 2 Excedrin. The next day, I do not even sleep late. Eyes sting with dryness, body aches like I've been beaten up. I walk hunched over. Had to just say holy moly about the trip. Reflecting more deeply, I remembered that the red and green dragons were Geoffrey of Monmouth's beginning to the King Arthur legend, a topic of interest to me in college and young. His wife and a devotee of his wrote a book on the Grail legend. At the bottom of a pond, 2 dragons wrestled, which became the symbol of the house of Pendragon, Arthur's father. I must read more about it. Lucy's sister, I name her, living myth, summoner of angels, challenger of character. I love this one. It's a teacher, a reckless friend. Future dose-wise, I will do half the amount. Duration, 5 hours intense, 4 more in gentle come down.